discussion around a few of the issues that have come up and questions that we've received from some of the groups that wanted to just hear what other Watch For Me partners were doing in these areas. So I'll take just a couple minutes to share you know, how the round of trainings happened, some updates on the materials, because we've still gotten a few questions about that. And then we will jump into asking some folks on the call to tell us a little bit more about some specific issues related to their community's involvement in automated enforcement, Vision Zero, and coordinating with Bike Share and other kind of bike programs. And then we'll have time at the end just to go through the roster of folks that are joining us today. We do have a smaller group, so I think we can have a little bit more intimate conversation around what you're doing, what you're planning, issues that have come up, anything that you want to discuss with us or amongst other Watch For Me communities. So the training status, we have pretty much completed the officer training courses. Those were held from June to August, and we had 150 officers from 49 different agencies. We ended up holding 9 trainings, and so we felt like that was great attendance. Thanks to all the folks who hosted one of those courses. Thanks to Ed and his team for bringing the materials. The first round of materials were distributed at those events. And certainly thanks to Kristen Blank for organizing those, and to Brian Massengill for being there. So if you have any questions about the trainings that your officers received, or questions, comments for the future, we're really open to hearing about those experiences and what we might be able to do for the next round of training. If we don't have questions on that, then I can move into the materials status. So this is information that we got from Brian Lopez, who's been working with Ed Johnson to deliver the materials that NCDOT received. So in the trainings, everybody got some of the print materials, but there was kind of a delay in getting the bike lights and some of the reflective materials. A lot of that was delivered last week. The Triangle partners should now have theirs, and possibly even the East Coast folks should have gotten theirs by today. We're hoping that the Mountain partners will get their bike lights or their reflective bracelets next, hopefully by early next week, and you should have already received your bike lights. And I think almost everything will have been shipped by Monday if it hasn't been already. Ed, did you have any updates to that?
No updates to that. The East Coast gets delivered today, and we've got all the materials in, so Brian and Nick are working hard to get it pushed back out.
Thanks, Ed. Is there any questions from the folks on the call? Okay, then I will move it on.
Just one, I have one. And when it said the partnering agencies like Greensboro, Charlotte, and Kannapolis, we're in the areas of Kannapolis and Charlotte, and the reflective bracelets shipped by Monday. Was that this past Monday or coming up? Because we haven't received the reflective bracelets.
This next Monday.
Next Monday.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's when they're shipped. It may still take a couple more days for them to be delivered.
Okay.
So the other thing I wanted to do is give you all a heads up about program evaluation. Every year around this time, we start trying to track what the communities are doing so that we can roll that into our annual summary that lives on the website. It's used by Ed and his team to, assess how the Watch For Me program is doing, if we're being cost effective. The information that we gather are really important because we compare ourselves over time. We look at the health of the program, if it's really accomplishing what we're trying to accomplish. And so thank you all for your involvement, past and future, in helping us evaluate how the program is being delivered. This year, we're going to use a very similar process to last year. We'll have a survey that comes out. I think in the past we've used SurveyMonkey. We're going to use something similar this year. Natalie O'Brien is one of our researchers and experts in program evaluation. She's going to be joining the Watch For Me team and helping administer that survey and to do follow-up interviews later in November and early December. So just keep an eye out and watch for an email. Probably our first email will come through the Watch For Me Google group, but we might have individual follow-up from Natalie if we haven't gotten information from you. Those surveys, we're going to be asking things like, how many events have you planned? How many people have you been engaging? What types of audiences are you working with? How much press and media attention have you received? Just the metrics that we've been using to evaluate how the Watch For Me program is getting out there in front of people. And then remember that we have a separate link for reporting law enforcement operations that might result in warnings or citations. So watchformenc.org/reporting is where you go to report your actual enforcement operations. And pretty much everything else will get reported to Natalie in those surveys. And then again, the interviews, will be reaching out to you individually to schedule those later in November, but hopefully before the winter break. And that's our chance to check in and get some of those more qualitative outcomes from you, to hear how your community is responding, what kind of policies you're setting in place that support the program, anything else that we can't easily capture in other ways. So again, thank you all for your involvement in helping us understand the program and how it's working. And so the next slide I have for anybody who's following along is just to let you know about what we're thinking about for the 2018 program. As the community is expanding, the community of Watch For Me partners, we've started with 4 partners back in 2012 in the pilot, and we now have 32 communities. We've heard from a lot of you over the years that you're less interested in having these, short virtual meetings, and more interested in actually sitting down with the folks in your community, in your region, and having a more in-depth peer exchange in an in-person setting. And so that's actually what we're looking to do for next year. We might still have a virtual kickoff just to orient everybody to the Watch For Me program and the timeline, but then we're looking to coordinate for hopefully around 4 regional workshops. So we might center one in the coastal area or maybe around Wilmington, certainly having one in the Triangle since we have so many Triangle partners, one in the mountains and one perhaps in either Charlotte or the Triad area. We're very interested in getting your feedback on what you want to get out of those sessions, how long you think how long you're likely to attend. If you see a particular format that would be very useful. We're definitely envisioning less than a day so that people could travel up and back and not require an overnight stay. And the thinking is that we could provide a space that the folks could network within and across the different coalitions, share data. We could provide some best practices, but also there would be time for some breakouts and hands-on development of your plan that you're going to use to help guide your activities with Watch For Me for the year. And then at those sessions, we could also be delivering any kind of one-on-one assistance and sharing the materials that you might need to do the work for the year. So any quick initial reactions to that? All right, well, you're certainly welcome to email me as well with your thoughts on that format moving forward. So the second part of this meeting was really to jump into some of the topics that have been raised by different Watch For Me partners, and one was around the question of automated enforcement. And is there a role for that in helping protect pedestrians and bicyclists? What's allowed, what's happening in the state, what's being planned. And we've already heard from a couple of folks in Greenville and Wilmington that that you've been involved in either past programs or in planning future programs. So we certainly wanted to hear from you guys, but also one of our colleagues at HSRC, Libby Thomas, has been developing an update to a paper that she put out a few years ago that brings together the research showing best practices and what the research shows is the effectiveness of automated enforcement programs. So I wanted to check and see if Libby has joined us and if she wanted to give a quick update on that project.
Hi, Laura. Yes, I'm here with Kristen. Thanks for inviting me today. So, as Laura mentioned, this white paper was prepared a few years ago to provide an overview of automated enforcement systems and their potential for improving pedestrian and bicycle safety. That was done in 2012. Actually, Laura, I did not do that initial study, but I guess it followed on a study I had done evaluating international automated enforcement programs around the world. So we have reviewed a lot of program evaluations, and the evidence is pretty clear, and many critical reviews have come to the same conclusion that automated enforcement programs work to reduce speeding and to reduce crashes. It's a little more difficult to associate these effects with pedestrians and bicyclists in particular, just because there are often lower numbers of those types of crashes at any particular location. But we know that speed has a big impact on pedestrian and bicycle safety, and it's a huge risk factor for severe injuries. When pedestrians and bicyclists are struck, it also affects motorists' willingness to yield to pedestrians and cyclists at crossings, at uncontrolled crossings in particular, and it just affects the overall dynamic and perceptions of safety and how comfortable pedestrians and bicyclists feel using the street. So that's just, at any rate, we're getting ready to kind of update this look at the effectiveness evidence. This white paper is called An Overview of Automated Enforcement Systems and Their Potential for Improving Pedestrian and Bicyclist Safety. And that's in the Pedestrian Bicycle Information Center white paper series. So we'll probably, I'm sure we'll get the word out to you when that white paper is updated with the latest evidence. But meanwhile, it's still a good kind of state of knowledge of the issues surrounding this topic for many communities and states. And North Carolina has some kind of nuanced challenges regarding automated enforcement, and some of you can probably speak to that better than I can. But at any rate, so that's one resource. Another, a recent report by the National Transportation Safety Board also looked in depth at how to reduce speeding-related crashes involving passenger vehicles, and this did cover passenger vehicles and crashes with all other types of road users. But they made some pretty strong recommendations for national DOT to update guidelines for best practice, some of the best practice reports they have out. So that will be a resource that may get updated in the coming few years. Also, Countermeasures That Work, a resource that hopefully you're all aware of, that is produced for state highway safety offices. That reviews effectiveness measures for speeding and pedestrian bicycle safety for the kinds of programs that you're doing here. So those are three resources that kind of cover the issues as well as the safety effectiveness for these programs. And since I don't know exactly what you might be interested in, I'll be happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you so much, Libby. I think a lot of the Watch For Me partners have been thinking about issues that relate to pedestrian and bicycle safety from the perspective of, driver yielding and some of those issues. And we don't always think about, this huge impact that speed has and what some of the enforcement tools might be to address that. But at the same time, we know that a lot of our partners are focusing on speed and thinking about speed from, in terms of impacts for other motor vehicle users. So it's really helpful to kind of bring that issue into the fold for Watch For Me and think about how working towards reducing speeding and red light running and these other issues can also help benefit the Watch For Me program and the ped bike injuries we're seeking to reduce.
Definitely, and as Laura and I mentioned just before, but just kind of in passing, Laura is right that several studies have documented the reluctance of drivers to slow and yield at uncontrolled crosswalks, for example, when speeds are higher. So we have many suburban type corridors that may even have speed limits of 35, but motorists are often traveling much above that. So that's definitely slowing corridor speeds on facilities that are often used by pedestrians and bikes could be one use of these systems. There are other potential systems coming out that may have other types of applications, like on freeways and interstates, point-to-point types of enforcement systems. So there's a lot emerging in this area. In addition, some jurisdictions like Washington, D.C. are trying red light cameras, or not just red light cameras, but cameras at stop locations with signs, and they are using those to help enforce motorist yielding at crosswalks at stop control locations. So there are all kinds of potential uses of technology to help supplement law enforcement, since we know that the numbers of officers just hasn't been able to keep up with the increasing travel and mobility and vehicles on the road over the years. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you so much, Libby. Are there any other questions if people want to ask them, or for those of you who are logged in, if you can type into the chat box, that's another option. And if we don't have questions for Libby, I think folks would be interested to hear the experiences in Greenville. So Mike Ross and your cohort, do you want to share what you've been doing around automated enforcement?
Sure. I'm here with Lieutenant Mike Broadwell, and he's going to kind of give you a quick overview of what we've been doing and some of the challenges that we've faced so far and where we are.
Thank you.
All right, good afternoon. So it's been kind of a slow process. We're not currently operating yet with our red light enforcement, but we're in the process of getting the infrastructure in place, and we should be going live about a month from now. So probably mid-October we'll be going live with our warning period. But it has been kind of a slow process to get it going. We started in 2016 just getting the legislation through North Carolina, through a House bill, just to give us authorization to run a red light camera program. After getting that House bill passed through, we had to get our city ordinance in place and get all of our local legislation tightened up, including with our Pitt County School Board of Election, all that. So now that we have all that in place, we got the company that is going to run our red light camera for us is ATS, American Traffic Solutions. So through the bid process, we elected to go with that company, and we'll be breaking ground this month. So overall, it's probably been between a year and a half process between concept and implementation.
And do you see the locations where you're doing red light enforcement? Are those going to be in areas where there might be high pedestrian or bicycle traffic nearby?
Yeah, what we did was really looked at high crash locations as our primary where we want to put each one of our specific stoplight enforcement. We chose 5 intersections throughout the entire city, and those were our highest 5 intersections where we had crashes. It didn't necessarily correspond with pedestrian accidents, but we did look at that also. I think one aspect that is important with the red light camera is the right turn on red enforcement, and a lot of times we'll see that our pedestrian wreck will occur when a vehicle is traveling and doing a right turn on red, just trying to beat the light, or just kind of rolling through that red light and not checking the crosswalk to their right.
That was something we discussed in our July meeting with the Watch For Me partners when we were looking at some of the crash types. Turning crashes at intersections is a big deal. So it does seem like what you're talking about with helping prevent right turn on reds might really help be one way to address those.
Yeah, and one thing we're going to do is, as part of the system that we're using, it involves a 12-second video of every violation. And so we are going to collect those videos and data and watch all the right turn on reds. And so we'll be able to see if we have any close calls with pedestrians that would normally go unreported. We'll at least be able to see that data and see, hey, we had a close call at certain intersections and we might want to step up our patrols or enforcement at that location.
That is excellent. We will be following up to see what you learn on that. And so how are you thinking about rolling this out with the community? Is there a communication strategy that's part of your launch?
Yeah, there is. We're about to really push it out right now. We've over the past year, we've been just kind of putting some teasers out through our social media and our local media, just about the red light camera program and about the city council's approval. But it's just been very sporadic. Now that we're about a month out, we're about to ramp up our promotions on it. It's going to be very transparent. Everybody can go to our website. We've got a full layout on our website of exactly how the cameras work, their locations, you know, how you pay your tickets. I mean, the entire program is completely transparent. And we are going to ramp it up big time, starting immediately. We wanted to wait till about a month out. So from now to the warning period starts in about a month, and then when the warning period starts, we have a 30-day warning period where no actual civil citations are written, but they still will be actually mailed a warning citation where no fee is associated. And so between the warning tickets going out and our media push, it's gonna be everywhere. So everybody in town will be aware of it.
Excellent. Do folks on the call have questions for Mike? Well, thank you guys so much for being on the call and sharing. I think just knowing the process that you've gone through and the time it takes and what you might expect to get out of it is very useful for us to be thinking about, and how other communities might be following that same path.
Sure, we should have some numbers for you. Probably by November, we'll be able to share some real data that we're collecting as we really get cranked up in mid-October, late November to mid-November.
Yeah, we would love to take a look at that. So let me also see, was anybody from Wilmington able to join us? It sounds like there wasn't, but we had talked to Officer Pullman, who mentioned that Wilmington had been involved in some automated speed enforcement in the past. So we'll see what we might be able to learn from her offline and maybe share any resources from Wilmington on the website after the call.
Yes, and Laura, we actually had a question. So Charlotte COT Angela wants to know, is this information that Mike just talked about for Greenville, is that on their website for the red light camera info, or where might we be able to find that later?
Sure, let me pull it up right now. GreenvilleNC.gov is our official website. I'm at somebody else's computer, so I'm going to type it up real quick. And let me get you the exact link. Our government and then our police page. And then we've got a tab right under police that says Red Light Camera Program. Very easy to find, user-friendly. And it'll go through, and it's got everything from an overview of the project, diagrams, actual video on how the red light cameras work, where the cameras are located, what to do if you get a citation, where your payments are mailed, what to do if you want to appeal. So it really lays it out there in the open for our program.
Thanks so much. I included this in the chat box, and I'll also send it out via email after our call today.
Thanks. And it's greenvillenc.gov, and then under police, red light camera.
Thank you guys both so much. And Libby, I don't know if she's still around, but I think our next topic area related very closely to automated enforcement, and that was the issue of Vision Zero. We know that North Carolina has a statewide Vision Zero strategy, and many communities are developing their own local plans for having Vision Zero, or basically any plan that's looking at how we can eliminate roadway-related fatalities. And oftentimes, if you follow the Vision Zero network, some of the national movement, you see that automated enforcement and changes to the built environment are two core principles, and basically looking at speed and the role of speed in crashes and injury in general are also big elements in Vision Zero plans. And so we've had a lot of questions about Vision Zero and the role that Watch for Me can play. If that's, the work that we're doing here, thinking about kind of a multidisciplinary look at the crashes and how enforcement in the built environment and community outreach can be a part of that, it seems to tie in very closely with Vision Zero. So Ed, I don't know if you wanted to say anything else about Vision Zero, or if we wanted to just open it up for anybody who's on the call to tell us about what their community's Vision Zero plans are, and if they're making connections with the Watch for Me program.
This is Ed. I'd be real interested to see on a local level from law enforcement what the connections are for Vision Zero. We certainly are. We're working with the Vision Zero Task Force on a statewide basis, and the committee is made up of multiple, from Highway Patrol, local law enforcement, and a multimodal approach. But I'd really be interested to know what's happening on the local level with that.
So this is Angela in Charlotte. We just updated our Transportation Action Plan in February with City Council, and one of the new objectives in our updated Transportation Action Plan is in fact the Vision Zero initiative. So we're just starting to lay the foundation for what that's going to look like between both CDOT and CMPD, as well as partner agencies throughout the community. We've been sketching things down on paper and meeting with each other and having conversations about what this is going to look like. It does include a bond ask to fund safety improvements as well as some staff. So stay tuned to us, I guess, for more news moving forward.
Angela, this is Ed. I'd be real interested to find out, especially with your all Complete Streets initiative, how that applies to the Vision Zero, or even better yet, correlates to it for perhaps intersection geometry or education enforcement program, or even evaluating and looking at where Complete Streets models are, maybe even related to first mile, last mile with different modes of transit, and then how are you all evaluating it with a look at the Vision Zero and how to understand that further, I guess.
So we haven't started any in-depth evaluation yet. My staff at this point is pretty well full up, just taking care of the traffic safety challenges that we face every day. We do have a couple of people from our city manager's office that handle data analytics, and we have been steadily feeding them data in hopes that they can start to help us develop more of what our future evaluation is going to look like. We would really like to start to develop a high injury network and focus enforcement efforts and education and efforts along those high injury networks, rather than just target intersections. We'd like to get out into the schools a lot more and do some education with driver's ed. We have some partners that have the ability to help us with that. It's just a matter of deciding what the messages that we want to help them spread to the students. Enforcement-wise, we're definitely exploring the possibility of red light running cameras and speed enforcement. We haven't gotten much past saying, yeah, we're interested. We had both of those programs once and discontinued both of them with the court decision that came down in the early 2000s for a variety of reasons. But definitely looking at reestablishing both of those programs and what that might take and how it should look and what does that mean to our police officers. Our previous effort in that required a police officer to actually sit in the van, the speed enforcement van, and it was not the most thrilling duty for a police officer to sit in a van all day. But that was the way it was deemed that we were going to handle it in terms of people were challenging tickets if there wasn't a police officer also observing the speed enforcement. So we have a lot of work to do, a lot of groundwork to lay. Definitely going to consider things in terms of complete streets and what does that mean from the built environment perspective. Really the way we're approaching Vision Zero is that if you can picture the graphic of an umbrella, and Vision Zero is that safety umbrella that is going to encompass anything and everything that we do here at CDOT. Whether that's education, our designs need to really consider safety for both the pedestrian, the bicycle, for all three modes of transportation, you know, the motorist, the pedestrian, and the bicyclist. And I think we do a good job of that, but there's always room for improvement.
Okay. Well, I had a follow-up question. This is Ed
Sure.
again. Have you all had any experience with using the Strava map, the heat sourcing maps for bike or ped or runners?
So we know of it. I know that our bicycle program manager uses the Strava map just to sort of mentally start to map out where he might want new bike routes. We have not used it in terms of crowdsourcing, but we have heard about crowdsourcing as a potential tool that we might use in our Vision Zero toolbox. So this is, again, one of those things where, you know, once we find a funding source and start to staff up a Vision Zero program, that I think we'll definitely be using some sort of crowdsourcing application to just help us identify where peds and bikes are, where, you know, CMPD might spend their energy best on the Watch for Me MC campaigns. Right now we're doing it on a sort of a request basis. I either request from CMPD or I get requests from the schools that they'd like enforcement, or I get requests through the community that, you know, people aren't yielding at a certain crosswalk, and so I reach out to my contact at CMPD, Ted, who's here in the room, and he schedules usually a joint campaign. He doesn't usually just do Watch for Me MC. He'll do seatbelt enforcement at the same time, or other enforcement activities along with Watch for Me MC. So we'd love to use crowdsourcing to identify where those locations might be best, not just the random phone call type thing.
Okay, and this is Ed again. One more follow-up question for the whole group, really. Do folks have any experience or feedback with using speed feedback signs that store the information that an officer can come back and download to see trends as it relates to school zones.
What did you say, trends?
Yeah.
Like, see a decrease in, like, if I
Ed, I just want to understand what you're talking about. So you're talking about a school zone flasher perhaps capturing speeds as well for data that an officer then might look at and see whether or not speeds drop during the school flasher times? Is that what you're asking?
That's right. Some of the technology with the speed feedback signs these days are certainly with a flasher, but they also have a receptacle that an officer can drive up to with a remote device, digital device, that download the information either on a daily or weekly basis to analyze and see when the school zone actually is, what the time frame is, but then also correlate that with when speed, when speeders are going through the school zone. Because I understand it, I'm not a law enforcement officer by any means, but that helps to see when a law enforcement officer is not there, perhaps what school zone to target specific to speed data, enforcement issues, knowing that they can't be at every school zone every morning or every afternoon. But the capture of that data and the uploading of it, without having to get out of the car and plug it into the facility, really helps them to understand what's happening in that area. I'm just curious to know if anybody's using that technology or has heard of others using it to help them in those school zones.
Hey, this is Ted Crowley from CMPD. When I was working as a traffic officer in one of my prior divisions, what I did for a couple of the school zones, I went out in an unmarked car and just shot the cars with my LiDAR just to get an average speed with an unmarked car, and then I went out there a week later on the same day and time and then wrote tickets. And the speeds were pretty much the same at the same time. If you got a 25-mile-an-hour school zone, my average speed, I think, was about 40 miles an hour on the one day when I was sitting there on an unmarked car. And then when I was sitting there with my marked car doing enforcement, it got down to about 38. So it was pretty much still about the same speed. So you're still going to get about the same speed. You got people that go through the school zones anyway, and they don't even pay attention to the yellow flashing lights as is, let alone maybe a mile per hour sign. You might get a couple people looking at it, but they really don't pay attention to that stuff.
Which is discouraging because we put flashers up at almost all of our school zones. We do not have that technology, Ed, here in Charlotte. We do have some driver feedback signs which are not associated with school zones that we have just recently installed, and I am going to check and see if we have that information in the technology that we purchased. If we do, I'm not aware of it, but I'm thinking that our technicians may know about it, and maybe we can hook our CMPD officers up with the ability to look at that and maybe target some enforcement. We put the driver feedback signs in where we did to address a run off the road crash problem. People were just taking a curve too fast, and so maybe that would be an opportunity for our officers to target speeding associated with a run off the road crash problem.
This is Sergeant Sarver with Cornelius PD.
Yeah.
We currently use some speed signs to where we can put up anywhere around town there through All Traffic Solutions, and we can put them in ghost mode, which shows a display, or have their speed flashing, but it collects the data, and with the reports and with the way that it's done now, it's automatically uploaded every 3 hours. So if I put one out this morning during the school time, I can already see what the speeds were. It can be broken down into hours, how many cars, the volume, but also they have like 10 different speed reports that we can pull out off that speed sign, and one of them is priority enforcement priorities, which would indicate when you had your most speeders, the high speeds. It doesn't log individual speeds, but it has like a speed bank, 5 to 10, 10 to 15, and we've been successful in putting that out in our community and being able to locate areas and target areas at specific times rather than having to go out at all hours.
Okay, well that's good information to hear. I appreciate the feedback on that. No pun intended. But it's also good to know that in one instance it works, and in one instance, or it works in some instance, and some it may not, because that's what we're hearing throughout the state as well.
So I'm wondering if this has been really helpful to hear the different ways that we're looking at speed enforcement and these issues as part of Vision Zero or other plans. Are there any other questions about Vision Zero? Because we had one other question about how folks are using the Watch For Me messages in coordination with bike share programs. And I know programs are coming online, it seems like in a different community every day. Raleigh is now getting their bike share program active, and others are just wondering how, when bike share is rolling out, is that an opportunity to trigger some of the safety messages and collaborations that we're developing through the Watch For Me program? We may not have anybody who is able to talk about that specific topic today, but I think a related question was, how are the Watch For Me communities working with bike organizations more generally? And Ed and I were very recently in a meeting with Lisa Regal, who's the director of Bike Walk NC, the statewide pedestrian and bicycle advocacy group. And we heard from her that she's very interested in learning more about how the local Watch For Me efforts can really dovetail with her organization's activities. And she's got members in Carrboro and Raleigh and many of the places that are doing Watch For Me. I think they are enthusiastic to share their experiences, their problems, their knowledge of where there are issues, and see how they can get plugged in. So if that's something you would like to help us make any connections with the bike advocacy community that Lisa is leading, we're happy to do that. But we also are really open to hearing how others are working with their bike coalitions. Is there anybody from Asheville on the call still? I know they've done so much in the past to try to engage in and work hand in hand with their bike community.
Yeah, we work with Asheville on bikes for some of the festivals and stuff, and they've helped us in kind of disseminating information and putting it out there to the public.
Okay. More, it sounds like they've done more on getting it out there rather than, helping plan where enforcement or activities are needed.
Yeah, we mostly just kind of use them to put the education out there. We have our own statisticians and all that pull the numbers for us for everything else. They do pedestrian counts every September, and we use that information.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that really covers some of the specific topics that we wanted to raise in the call, and then we wanted to just leave it open to kind of do a round robin to see what folks are planning for the future. And I know we wanted in particular to hear from some of the newer communities that this is their first time to be part of Watch for Me. So Kristen, since you can see who's still logged in on the call, do you want to run through the roster and you know, when you hear your community or your name, you can just tell us a little bit more about what you're planning?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And since you mentioned about the new communities, Zachary, if you can still access the audio, Zachary from Burgaw, if you'd like to talk about some of the plans that you have.
Yeah, can everybody hear me? Can you hear me fine?
Yep, we can hear you.
All right. Well, we actually just, I guess 2 or 3 weeks ago, we had our first bicycle rodeo as part of Watch from ENC. So that was part, I'm the Parks and Rec director, so I'm not a law enforcement officer, but we work with, of course, Karen in the planning department and the police department to do that, as well as all of our other partners like the schools. We haven't done any law enforcement yet or education. We hope to start that soon. We've had a kind of a turnover in our officers. Some are coming and some are going, so we're still getting everybody adjusted. And we put up 3 pedestrian signs in the middle of our road because our greenway crosses 53 twice. So we're just trying to do little things like that. We've also got our speed trailer out, or we got a new one that shows you like a sad face if you're going 1 mile an hour over the speed limit. So just little things like that. And of course, running our Watch for Me Facebook page as well.
Thank you so much, Zachary.
Next, Mike Ross, if you're still on the line from Greenville, if you have some other information to share about your outreach activities, maybe things you've already held or things that you're planning on holding.
Sure. We've recently been working with the East Carolina University Police Department with school back in session. We've done some enforcement operations around the college. We've certainly had an increase in pedestrian activity with all the students back in town. Back in August, we had a booth set up for a Watch for Me booth at a National Night Out in our uptown area. We gave out a lot of information and interacted with a lot of people. We've also been working with our Active Routes to School coordinator, Taylor Davenport. I think we've got a Walk to School Day coming up, so we're going to be working on that with her. And we also did some bicycle rodeo and gave out some information at our police kids academy back in August, and we're actually having a citizens academy in I think it's in November, and we'll be doing the same there.
Excellent, thanks.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. And also you mentioned Walk to School Day, and just for everybody else, that's coming up on October 4th. So if you're still looking for different outreach ideas, that might be something to consider. Meg Pegman from Asheville, are you available to give us an update on your activities?
Yeah, our coordinator, I don't think is on the line, so she would know a lot more of what the city's doing. As far as the police department, you know, we've kind of just been doing the education part, passing out stuff, weaving around to local businesses, gave out, you know, some of the old bumper stickers, put up some of the posters, stuff like that.
Great, thanks for sharing. And Sergeant Sarver from Cornelius, do you want to talk a little bit? I know you have a trailer that you had been working on for the materials. Maybe you can talk a little bit more about that.
Yes, ma'am. We have a enclosed traffic safety unit trailer that we store all of our educational materials and all of our traffic crash reconstruction equipment in, and we've been had the we've been working on getting it restriped and to include the logos of the Watch From ENC, Booze or Lose It, Clicker Ticket, Governor's Highway Safety, Child Passenger Safety, and other services that we provide. So we're pretty excited about that, being able to get that out there on our enclosed trailer. Some other things, we also set a booth up at National Night Out and was our kickoff. We were able to get our materials before our training, which we appreciate, and we're able to get that out there, and it was well received. And we've do a lot of speed enforcement. We have a lot of high speed areas within the town and working it and greenways that run through. We've been traffic officers have been driving around inspecting and evaluating the crosswalks as far as the speeds and the speed limits, and we've also actually been able to work with DOT and get a couple speed limits reduced in areas that we felt that was a safety hazard. We've just recently planned a educational event that we're going to open up to the public that we're going to be holding at least once a quarter, unless we have a lot of participation. Then we may do it every other month, just as far as bicycle, pedestrian, and motorist safety, and invite them to the town hall here and be able to go over the laws and the responsibilities and roles of each of the parties involved. And we've also been coordinating with the Safe Routes to School and plan on participating in that on October the 4th. Let me see, I got it written down here. Let me make sure I got everything. And we've also been, as far as the educational program, we're going to try to reach out, get other divisions within the police department, such as our support services and patrol, as far as reaching out to like bike shops and homeowner associations, so that we can really promote that and have a big turnout for that. That's pretty much it.
Well, it sounds like a really long list. That's really good to be working with partners where you can and combining forces like the homeowners association. That's a great idea. Eric from Boone, are you able to share a little bit about your activities?
Sure, yeah. Tomorrow actually is our kickoff. This will be the 4th year we've done this with Hardin Park Elementary School. We've got a bike rodeo. The Boone PD will be there with all their bike patrol. We'll have the Safe Kids bike trailer there and all that. And the kids have enjoyed that in the past. We get, maybe 100 kids plus parents out there at this thing. We've had a number of informational booths. Prior to this, we were at ASU's Safety Fest first week of school, just handing out material. Pretty much it was freshmen that were coming to this thing, but it's good to get them out there and kind of open their eyes to some of the issues that they're going to have as pedestrians and cyclists. We were involved in the Cyclovia back in July with informational stuff as well. We've got another big thing is our downtown Halloween party. We set up and usually have gifts. And last year we did the fluorescent bags for trick or treat. And this year we're going to go with we've purchased some bike lights in addition to the ones we've gotten from you guys. So we've got a bigger supply that we can hand out. We've also gotten some fluorescent shirts that we're with the Watch For Me logo and the Town of Boone logo that we're starting to get out as well. Boone PD has been working some enforcement, especially with school back. They've looked at the downtown area. We actually have a new downtown officer who is on a bike. The officer who was there before was not a patrol, but so he's out there and he's talking to the skateboarders and he's talking to the guys riding on the sidewalk and he's talking to the people without the helmets and really making the impact with his presence. The other area that we're looking at and working with is the hospital area, the wellness district. There are a lot of people that are moving back and forth between the hospital and different offices, nurses and staff at the hospital are required to park on a different section of the, across the road. So there have been issues there before too with pedestrians, and they're kind of targeting that area with the hospital police. There's also just outlying areas of ASU where we have a lot of pedestrians, in the downtown area where we have a lot of pedestrians. They're targeting that. This year it seems like we've had a couple of more PSAs out, and there's the press has picked up a couple of things, not including this bike rodeo, but also just an overview of the Watch For Me program. And so that's been good, a good press release. And that's kind of that in a nutshell. The people I've got with me, have you got anything else you want to chime in? The partners, Jane says the partners are great, have been great to work with. And Boone Area Cyclists is our local bike advocacy group, and they will be there tomorrow at our bike rodeo, and they've been the health department, Active Routes School. So yeah, we've got a broad range, and people, when we talk to them, they're, being that this is our 4th year, they still come back wanting bumper stickers and flyers, and we see bumper stickers on some of the strangest vehicles now, but the word is getting out.
Well, thank you for sharing, and I'm sure talking about how the word's getting out, given your work with the university and working with the transient population like we talked about, and the training, there's such a high turnover rate, so trying to reach a new population year after year as students come back. Thank you for sharing so much. And we have a couple of more to go through, but does anyone have any questions? Has anyone heard anything about a specific activity where they want more information, or does anyone have a similar demographic that they're trying to reach that they'd like to find out more information from someone who's already shared information? I want to give you guys the opportunity to talk to each other as well. No? Okay. Well, we can hold it until we're done going through everyone. Christina Moon, you're up next. Christina from Carborough. Are you able to share some information with us? And I think she still might be on mute, so give her a couple more seconds. We can come back. All right, let's skip over to Angela from Charlotte. Angela, are you available to share more about some of your activities? Hey.
Hi. So we are actually doing our official kickoff this Wednesday with a press conference at which our Mayor Pro Tem is going to speak, as well as our department director. We're doing a joint press conference this year. We've not had good success with our press conferences in the past, so I'm hoping that a joint press conference with another celebration type activity might garner a little more interest from the press. We're celebrating our 100th mile of sidewalk retrofit. So we're launching Watch For Me NC as part of that at Kennedy Middle School. I think it is Kennedy Middle School. And so that'll be happening this week. And then Officer Crowley, is it Officer Crowley? Mm-hmm. Yes. Tells me that he's got enforcement planned every other week from now through the end of October. So I'm really excited about that. We spent some time while we had you on mute chatting about a few things here, how we can get the message out in various ways, including using CDOT's Twitter account and the Watch For Me NC hashtag, pictures of our enforcement events and statistics about those types of things. So we're looking forward to just getting things rolling here and keeping things rolling pretty much all the way through the year now. We don't restrict this event or this education campaign to just one part of the year. We try to keep it rolling throughout the year. We had a little challenge last year with as many dignitaries as we had visiting due to the presidential election, so we didn't get as much enforcement in as we'd hoped. But hopefully we don't have that going on this year, so we'll be able to get a lot more enforcement activities on the books. And then, the one place I know somebody was saying they see the bumper stickers in the darndest places now, around the darndest vehicles. We have a countywide library system, so 20 libraries, and we pushed bumper stickers and rat cards to all 20 libraries. And I have done it twice now, and I'm seeing them disappear. So I'm hoping that that means people are picking them up at our libraries and using them. So I'm excited about that. I think it's a great way to get out into the community and reach a broader audience.
Thank you. Yeah, posting the information at the local library, that's a great idea, or at least posting a couple, even on the bulletin board where people can see them as they come in and out. I think we had Eric Buchanan from Apex on the line. He was on before. Are you still available to share ideas? Give it a couple seconds. Or Christina Moon from Carrboro, if you're able to join us. I see your mic's on, but I'm not hearing anything. Are you there? Well, we might be having some audio issues. Is anyone else on the line who I missed, who's not logged in on the online GoToMeeting but's participating in the conference call? Well, I think that might be it, Laura, for going through all of the different activities and outreach that people are planning, and I'll turn it back over to you and any other questions that people might have for one another.
Laura, this is Ed. I did want to follow up on one thing. Angela had brought it up, and I think Zachary had as well, being from Parks and Rec. But just to reemphasize, I think you've heard me talk about this before in other quarterly calls, is engaging in the non-traditional partner in that way in your municipalities. It's a great way to disseminate information through your Parks and Recreation brochures for the Watch For Me program, or if you're doing any kind of collaborative programming with your intra-departmental agencies, Parks and Recreation, police, senior centers, those kinds of things. Another place to take Watch For Me information that's good to get out, especially to newcomers to communities, is chambers of commerce, to let them know what's happening, and as part of the welcome packet, that could be a way just to disseminate information, as well as your libraries, or even if it is possible to work with hotel management or those kinds of outreach for speaking about transient users in Boone, we have a lot of folks who come in and out throughout the Outer Banks, and so we're using the hotel and tourism as a catalyst to get the information out to those folks. But that should be the same for the rest of the state as well, because there's a lot of visitors that come through, and it may be visitor information bureaus or chambers of commerce that are good for getting that information out to folks who are not necessarily from here or familiar with North Carolina law.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Ed. Thank you. Do we have any other questions for the folks that have shared their plans and activities, or are we ready to wrap it up, you think? Anything in the chat box, Kristen?
Nope, nothing in the chat box for now.
Okay. Well, it sounds like, thank you again for everybody who joined us today and could share what you're working on. It sounds like everybody has plans that are well in place, and we'll be looking to hear how your kickoffs next week and in the coming months, weeks and months go. We will keep letting you know about opportunities that are arising and new resources that are coming out. So I think most of you are familiar with the Walk to School Day and Walk to School Month that's happening in October. I know in the communications toolkit that we provide on the partner resource page, there's some template materials and things that you could use to share safety messages related to child safety in schools. And we can continue sharing those kinds of resources. Wanted to also alert you that the resources that Libby mentioned, the NTSB report on speeding and the countermeasures that work, we can share all of those when we archive the recording from today's meeting. And also wanted to let you know there is also a new GHSA report on bike safety, and it actually features the Watch For Me program as one of the examples of what communities can and are doing to address bike issues, but it also includes examples from other communities and notes on best practices. So we can put that out through the listserv and on the website as well. Just a question, is anybody planning to attend the GHSA conference next week? I know Ed Johnson will be there, but we will see if there's anything emerging from that conference that's relevant that we feel like will be useful to Watch For Me communities moving forward. So stay tuned for follow-ups in the listserv, and if you have any other questions or want to share updates before we send out that survey, then please feel free to follow up. And thank you all for your time today.
Thank you all for your work, and thank you for your continued effort.
Take care all.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Kristen.